So first of all, we're just going to say I'm so glad that we got online because I was having camera trouble. So we're online. I'm happy we're on time. So none of this pretending that everything's fine. I'm just going to admit that I was very stressed 2 minutes ago. But luckily, Matty, as always, was very on time, very organised, just patiently waiting for me to join. But Matty, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you? Besides all the stress there with getting everything set up.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. And how's your day going so far?
Oh, it just kicked off today. So I took a nice walk with my dog. It's definitely fall outside, so leaves are changing a little bit, cooler weather. So enjoying it. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's definitely getting to that time. I'm not enjoying. I don't mind this type of weather. I quite enjoy autumnal weather, but then I don't like that it's suddenly been like shorts and t-shirts and then plummeted to like a coat in like a day. And then I'm going to Spain next week, so it's going to be up in like the 20s again. So my poor body's just a bit confused. Right. Okay. Well, let's get into the show. So, welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I am a commercial architect at AWS. And today I have teammate Matty with me. Matty, do you want to do an intro? You've been on before, but just tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, Matty Serapi. I'm also a commercial architect here at AWS. In my past life, I was a business intelligence developer, so I have some experience with SQL. So happy to be here today.
Yes, good segue. So today we will be talking about writing your first CUR query, which I think is a topic that I wish I had a few years ago, how to get started, especially if I'd done some SQL stuff before, but wasn't adept to especially working with the CUR. And as you've probably heard Alex talk about many times, she printed off the entire CUR to learn it. And that kind of sometimes feels like what you have to do to understand the columns and all of the different nuances with it. So we're going to be chatting a lot about that today. Just as a reminder, the cost and use report, the CUR, so that's what we'll be referring to throughout the episode, is a massive set of data in which you can see everything about what you spent and everything you've utilized in your cost and use report. So please go check that out if you have not done that before, and I'll throw a link on in a second. Hello to everyone in the chat. As always, please send us messages in the chat. Any questions you have for me or Matty about the CUR or in general about optimization, throw it in there. And you can always email us at costoptimization@amazon.com if you have questions after. Okay, Matty, let's get started. Do you want to give any background to the CUR before, or do you want to jump straight into the demo?
So we'll jump straight into the demo, but I'll just give everybody a high-level overview of what my approach is going to be today. So we're going to start off very basic. So not everybody probably has the same experience building SQL queries. You might have folks in the chat that have done it for a long time. You might have folks that this is their first SQL query, as the name mentions, building your first one out there today. So we're going to take a look at the basic elements to building a SQL query. So what are some of the key reserved words? What are things that we need to have in every single query out there today? And then we'll get more advanced, taking a look at what does it actually mean to build your query in mind with cost and usage report. So pulling some of the things that might be interesting to you. So we are going to assume that you do have that cost and usage report launched out to there. Steph, I think, did share a link to that cost and usage report and how to set that up. So we'll share my screen. You're going to see in a second here some slides. And the reason I'm showing some slides is I'm going to be drawing on the screen. I'm a very visual person, and that really helps me. So hopefully it helps you as well. And then we'll jump into the actual Athena console and launching some stuff. Okay. So what you should see on the screen now is the Athena query editor slide. And the Athena query editor slide, what I wanted to just mention was several key elements here, if in case you're not familiar with Athena. So we've launched this service. You can just search it at the top bar here. And there's several things that we want to take a look at today. The first one is going to be database. Within that database is just really the database defined by the glue crawler. Now, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about today, it is part of that prerequisite lab out there. It's going to talk about the different services as part of the cost and usage report, taking a look at Glue, and then being able to query with an Athena. So this is one of the introductory setup steps. The next one is taking a look at the table. This table in reference here is my cost and usage report. Now, when you're building your query, you're going to take a look at this white space here. And this space is where you're actually going to write your first query. You have the row numbers here. You're going to write everything down here. And then you're going to hit this run button down below. What's going to end up happening if you are successful with your first query is you're going to get results down here. And those results you can preview on the console itself. Likewise, you can actually download the results, manipulate it within a spreadsheet. Okay, so that's just really taking everybody through the basics of the console there. Now, whenever I'm talking and teaching folks about SQL, how I like to approach SQL is taking a look at several key elements here. Now, SQL has several reserved keywords that let SQL know what you're trying to do. So the first one that we're going to take a look at here is select. And select is just really referencing everything down below it. What are the columns that you want to bring into your result? And this is what is known as projection. Not that you need to memorize that keyword, but maybe you get really intrigued with SQL and you want to continue to learn. This is what you're going to actually search for. So select is saying, hey, I want to pull year, I want to pull month, and I want to pull line item blended cost into my results. And you see those respectively down below: year, month, and line item blended cost. Okay. The next one is going to be the next reserve keyword. And this next reserve keyword is the from. And what you're really telling SQL is, where do I actually want to pull that data? So the reason that we started with that first slide is to show you that I do have that database out there. I do have that table name. You don't always have to have the database out there. Athena will do its best job to interpret what database you're trying to pull from. But best naming convention is to have the database, period, the table, to let it know where should you source this year, month, and line and blended cost from. Okay. The next element is the where statement. It's a reserved keyword down there. And it's really just, if you're familiar with the spreadsheet world, filtering. So where do I actually want to filter my data so that I'm only pulling year, month, and line and blended cost for the things I care about? In this case, I only care about the month of 9, so September. And I want to chain it together with the keyword and take a look at the year 2022. So I don't just want to pull September. I could have data from 2021, 2020. So in this case, everything for 2022. And then the last keyword, again, familiar with the spreadsheet world, this is just your sort being an order by. And you do see numbers here, 1, 2, and 3. So what are these in reference to? They're in the order of the columns above. You have 1, 2, 3. Likewise, I can just write the words year, month, and line and blended costs, but folks find it easier just to have the shorthand of 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then I ran the result, and this is what I get down below. I have several different rows, actually hundreds of rows with 2022, the month of 9, and unblended cost here. Okay. So everything makes sense so far. Do you think so, Steph? If not, I can stop and
definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in with a question that we've had, but just to iterate, I love this drawing thing. I think we should do this more. It's very clever. And the bit about the order by, sometimes we put this in because sometimes you see people, you can also reference like year, month, line item, unblended cost. So you can do either the 1, 2, 3, like Matty said. The shorthand is a lot easier to read. So don't be surprised if you read anybody else's queries and they have the actual names. So we've jumped in fast, as we normally do. But someone said there's a lot of prerequisites. They're a little bit lost. So let's take a step back. Do you want to go over quickly what the CUR is and what Athena is quickly, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yeah, so the cost and usage report is our most detailed way to see your cost and usage data. So you might be familiar already today with things such as Cost Explorer, being able to navigate in your console to see your spend. But the cost and usage report is going to be able to provide you a lot of that same level of actual aggregation of the sums of your spend, but it's going to give you a lot more detail as well. So maybe I want to take a look at the resource IDs. So cost and usage report can provide you ways. Maybe you're upgrading from GP2 to GP3. Maybe you want to see which EC2 instances are incurring the most spend there. And that's why you'd want to use the cost and usage report over something such as the Cost Explorer. Now, Athena is just your way to directly query that cost and usage report. So how that cost and usage report exists today is it's deposited into an S3 bucket, and you can have it as several different formats. There's one as a Parquet format, which is just a compression surrounding a file. There's CSV, so probably what you know as like a spreadsheet there. You can open it up and browse the Excel file. So Athena just gives you a way to actually query it directly.
Brilliant. And so this massive database is fundamental to how we do a lot of our optimization and how we get customers to find their own optimizations. So we recommend going and checking out the lab, and I'll just post it up again if anyone's joined between. But this lab enables you to set up the CUR with kind of the best information in mind, like the Parquet stuff, like the resource stuff that Matty just said. And then using Athena, this is just a way to make visualizing those costs easier. It does seem quite daunting kind of jumping in with SQL, especially if you're coming back from a finance point of view or haven't really used SQL much. But it is, like Matty said, it's kind of really similar to Excel. And once you get these fundamentals down and he finishes kind of explaining all this stuff, hopefully you can try and put this into practice and you can actually see it. And just before we move on, someone just asked, what is seen in line item unblended cost? Can you clarify that?
Oh, what is seen? Oh, so like what is returned here? Yeah. So if you're familiar with Cost Explorer, there's different ways to visualize your costs. There's unblended costs, there's amortized costs. Unblended cost is really just going to show you most similar to what you're going to be able to see in your invoice. So it is a good question. We will mention later on in the chat today on how do you actually determine what some of these columns mean. What are they actually showing here? So we will show the data dictionary, a good way to segue into that.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Any more questions, guys? Just throw them in the chat, please.
So as you saw, I had several hundred rows with the month of September here. And maybe I actually want to condense this down into 2 rows here. I don't want to take a look at hundreds and hundreds of rows and try to figure out how much did I actually spend for August? How much did I actually spend for September? And this is when you'd want to use aggregation. And we'll figure out on the next slide on why I'm actually talking about this, but we want to condense it down so that we have $3 for the month of August and then $28 for the month of September. And there's several examples of aggregation. There's a max, there's a min, sum, and count. And in this case, I'm doing a sum. I'm summing the unblended costs that you see within the cost and usage report. Likewise, you see it within Cost Explorer. But what I want to be able to do is group the different things here so that I know what I want to sum it against. So I want to bucket it for year and month so that I only have those 2 lines. So in this case, 2022-08 is going to be that first grouping. And then I'm going to sum everything in that grouping together. Likewise, I'm going to group everything together to 2022 in September and then sum everything together. So like the previous query that we ran before, we have the same elements. We have the select. It's going to tell us what are the columns that we want down here below. The one difference here is we're no longer just pulling the line unblended costs. We're having an aggregation. And again, the aggregations are things such as sum, max, and min. We're going to have the sum here at the beginning. We're going to wrap it with some parentheses. And it's just really telling us for our grouping of year and month, let's sum that data together. Down here below is the other differentiation that we have is this group by. And as Steph mentioned before, the 1 and 2 are referenced to these columns here. So 1 is year, 2 is month, 3 is this line item blended costs. Notice that we don't have a grouping for the 3 because we don't need to group by that because we're already summing it. Again, the groupings are really just to tell us what do we want to bucket our items year and month so that we can run the aggregation against it. And here we get a return of the data of 2022-08, 2022-09, and then the dollar values. Again, the question was asked, what does line item blended cost? It's going to really tie back to my invoice here, which leads us to a good transition. Whenever you're taking a look at your cost and usage report, how do I make sure that the data I have is correct? I always like to take a look at your Cost Explorer and line it out this way. You do see that the values tie out here below. So good way, good practice. All of the things that you're seeing today are exactly things that I approach my query building whenever I'm working with different folks here.
Yeah, and I'd love this shout out to Cost Explorer because the underlying data in Cost Explorer is the cost and use report. It's just kind of summarized. So you should, and I did the same thing, Matty. I used to, when I was writing reports, I would have to go and check, which seems a bit like, oh, just use Cost Explorer. But when it comes to thinking about automation of reports and dashboards, you want to make sure that the queries that you're using are 100% accurate because people will do this. They will go, I used to have customers that would do this. They would go and they would look at the result that I'd emailed them and then they would go to Cost Explorer and validate it, which is fair enough. You want to make sure that you're getting charged the right amount of money. But yeah, for your own self kind of assurance, go do that. And also like set yourself a challenge, like maybe tomorrow or this afternoon, if it's morning for you where you are, go and check out, like trying to find how much you spent on EC2 in one of your accounts and write that query and then come back into Cost Explorer and see if you can do that.
Yeah. And that's how I got started too. Just kind of exploring. No better experience than hands-on experience there.
100%.
For sure. So just a few more things to show you and like key elements here, and we'll put this all together. And I promise that a lot of this can seem daunting, but we're going to provide you shortcuts and ways that you can take a look at some of the pre-written queries that we already have out there today. So you're not starting from scratch. These are just so that you have a basic understanding of SQL. If you want to customize that query, you're able to do so. Okay. So in this case, we have Amazon S3 taking a look at usage, gigabyte month, and the amount of gigabytes ran in this standard storage tier. Again, I'm filtering here for S3, standard storage in gigabyte month, how much storage I have stored on standard, okay? Maybe I'm somebody that's particular about their units and want to see everything in terabytes instead of gigabytes. And this is where you might be able to use a case statement here. And in this case statement, you have the keywords again. So like how we have the keywords for select and from, we have the keywords for where and group by. So case when here, oops, sorry, I lost my pen. So the case, when you take a look at case, you can think of this as synonymous with if. So if you're familiar with maybe some programming languages, maybe you've done some spreadsheets, you can replace case when in your head with if. And what you're saying here is if the pricing unit is gigabyte month, then what do you want to do against it? Well, I'm going to take the line item usage amount. Again, we'll talk about how do you determine what these columns mean, but I'm going to divide it by 1024. You have several different rows here. So you can have several different evaluations. So the first one is taking when pricing unit equals gigabyte month and dividing it by 1024 for the usage amount. And likewise, the second line is going to do gigabyte and dividing that usage amount by 1024. And then at the end, you're going to have this catch-all. So what if none of the conditions are met? And in this case, we're going to have the value be 0. And you can see on the bottom now, after I've ran this query, I have about 35 terabytes of data rather than taking a look at it for 36,000 gigabytes per month. So just an illustrative example, but case statements can be very powerful when you're trying to build your first custom columns.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I didn't really learn about until kind of later on in my CUR. I think I used to just make mass tables and join them all together. But yeah, I think especially equating it case to if really just, and also think about it in terms of just how you speak. If this is this, then do this. It's quite natural language to use. So kind of try that out and think of a situation. If this account, then do this. So yeah, again, try and put this into practice. Just before we jump on, there's a question that we'll just quickly answer from the chat. So who do you see as the main users of CUR in enterprise? Finance teams, some type of FinOps role, or anything else? Who do you like to see a lot of money?
Yeah, it's a combination. It depends on the comfort level there. So I've seen FinOps teams where they're definitely more comfortable writing SQL statements there. But then likewise, they empower some of their business units to dive into that data. So what the FinOps teams will maybe do is aggregate that using a dashboard. So using that cost intelligence dashboard that we were talking about before, this summary view will power that dashboard. And they might be able to figure out different insights. Maybe my standard storage is really high. Maybe my EC2 spend is high. And then powering your different BUs, maybe you have like a power user out there today that's taking a look at how can I actually figure out the resource IDs so that I can communicate that to my team. So it can be a mixture, depends really on the comfort level, but identifying that SME within, or like a subject matter expert within your organization that's comfortable writing that SQL and doing those things and has the right permissions to do so is important.
Yeah, definitely agree. And don't forget that we're talking about this. The CUR can be created in your payer account, your management account from the high level to look across your entire organization, which is where they can see all of the data. So every single account, but every linked account can also create its own cost and usage report. So you can, like Matty said, empower developers to have these skills and let them know that they can create this in their account. And then it means that they can go and do some diving into their data, which is really powerful. And one more question, we'll just quickly answer this one. I think this is just a technical one. So what is the underlying structure of, I think that's just meant to be CUR. Is it a multiple months of CUR consolidated into one Parquet or CSV? I believe it depends on your setting, but say it's Parquet. If you have overwrite, it will overwrite the file, or like it creates a new snappy file, but it overwrites the previous amount of data. Is that right? I'm trying to remember.
It will overwrite it. You will have several different files out there though for the different months. So like it will partition the month for August, September. So you'll have like a file for August if you have the replace option, a file for September. And then how Glue works is it just picks it up and knows to basically combine those files in a single table view. So like that's abstracted from you as the user. It just looks like a single table, but in reality exists in several different files.
Excellent. Okay, cool. All right. Got about, I think, 7 more minutes. Let's crack on.
Yeah, let's wrap up and hopefully this can help you out today to write your first query. So the last slide, and I promise we'll go on hands-on keyboard next, is one of the key things that Steph mentioned was how do I even know what columns to use? So we had the example of Alex printing out the cost and usage report. what you can use is the exploratory data analysis. And this is a really powerful way to try to figure out what columns you bring out there today. So again, that select is going to say, what columns do I want to bring in? You can have that wildcard in there, that asterisk, or people will say select star. It's going to bring in every single column. The key word here, though, that we care about is this limit 10. And it's going to pull the first 10 rows so that you're not pulling back hundreds, thousands of rows to give you a preview of what is the data out there today, make the determination of these columns are relevant to me. Okay. And then from there, maybe I want to get a little bit more prescriptive. I want to take a look at Amazon EC2 for the month of August. What are the descriptions out there? You can use the group by, and these are going to give you the distinct values. There's different ways to do this. This is one of the ways that I do it, where I just take the columns I care about and then group them, and then it's going to give me distinct values.
Nice. So yeah, go try that and see if you can match it with your Cost Explorer. That's going to be the challenge I think we should push out to people today.
Okay, and then the last 4 minutes, let me just take you through some tips and tricks. And these are how we work today as well. So if you've launched that Cost Intelligence Dashboard Lab, you're going to have several different views out here. How I usually start to take a look at this is using the summary view. So great starting point. Summary view really takes a look at some of the same things that you see within Cost Explorer, but the team has done a great job of helping figure out the logic. So what is service defined as? How do I define purchase option? Because the cost and usage report is going to be huge. It's going to have a lot of different detail, and it can be overwhelming to try to figure out how I build a specific column. And we've done that for you already. Here, you hit that sideways ellipsis and hit preview view. Oh, and it's actually just kicked me out of the console. So apologize for that.
Always.
So let me relaunch this. Apologies for that.
No worries. And while Matt is doing that, I just shared the link to the Cost Intelligence Dashboard, Cloud Intelligence Dashboards. I keep saying the wrong name. That's quite late for us to mention them. If you're waiting for me to always drop the name of them, it's quite late in the show for me to do it, which is a surprise because I do that every episode.
Yeah, I mean, I love the CID. It's super powerful. So that sideways ellipsis, you can preview view. It's going to give you this. I'm going to just hit cancel really quick, but it will pre-populate that query for you. And what you can care about here is expanding this, taking a look at the different columns. So maybe I care about item description. Maybe I care about for like amortized cost, and I can sum that together. And again, I'm going to just move pretty quickly here, but like group by one. Again, I want to group the category of item description and then run the aggregation against it. And then you can run that query. So pretty powerful way to start your queries, really make it more streamlined. So
yeah, definitely.
It's scanning some results down here, and then you get your return results down below.
Two things I wanted to mention. One thing about the limit that Matty was talking about earlier. This is good just because if you have all of your data, say you've been running this for like 3 years, it'll take a while to bring back all of that information. It also, I think it's right that Athena charges you per data scanned. Correct. So you want to kind of limit the amount that comes back if you're cost conscious. And I don't know if you noticed, but one thing that he did, I don't know if you said this, Matty, that when you double click on the column heading, it will pre-populate into Athena. That's relatively new. I still copy it because I forget that is a thing. So yeah, don't forget that you can make your life a little easier by doing that.
Yeah, and it's true for the columns as well as the tables. So I can just double click that table or view rather, and then I'll bring it in.
Excellent. And did you show the show edit query for that? How to see what the view actually is?
Yeah, you can hit this show edit query, and it's going to pre-populate to what is and views are really just like stored queries that you have out there today. So you're not having to write this every single time, but you can use it to query against summary view. And this is the logic that goes into that.
Yeah, so if you want to see a really good query that's already written, have a look. Don't edit this if you're using Cost Intelligence, unless you have a specific reason where you might need to edit. But yeah, that's just a good way of seeing what the queries are and how to edit them.
Yeah. And then in the last minute here, it's important to point out, we will provide a link to the data dictionary here. But there's a whole bunch of columns that you're maybe really confused of what they mean. You showed that we had line item type, and you can see the definitions down here. It's going to give you what are the possible values in line item type. What does the column even mean in the first place? And what are the definitions here? I use this a lot. So make sure to bookmark this whenever you're taking a look at the cost and usage report. So that is my spiel for today. Any other questions? Steph?
Yeah, one thing I think someone asked before, what is the difference between unblended and blended cost? Do we want to quickly cover what that is?
Yeah, so unblended again is going to be closely aligned to your, and it's what a lot of my customers use to your invoice there. Blended is maybe you have different rates out there. So for standard tier, you might be using infrequently access, and it's going to provide you what is the average among all of those. So it's really just an average. And so I would suggest you use the unblended rate rather than the blended rate. Anything else to add there, Steph?
Nope, I think that covers it very well. Awesome. Okay, we are going to finish a couple of minutes early today just because there is thanks for covering this was the feedback. You're welcome. Thank you for asking. And thanks to everyone always for asking. And if you have any follow-up questions, always remember that you can email us, you can tweet me at Lift Like a Nerd. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe. Oh, we've had some really nice comments today. So thank you everyone for getting involved. This makes it a lot more valuable a session. So yeah, we're finishing a bit early today. Twitch has a really cool event for observability. I think it's a Build Live event. So stay on if you want to learn a little bit more. Also, shout out tonight. I am doing a live event with friend of the show, Jeff Barr. So AWS Fest is a free event. There's prizes, there's a magician, there's me. So what else do you want? I mean, it's a great couple of hours this afternoon. So check that out. And yeah, and next week we are talking about the kind of intricacies of right sizing when it comes to EC2. So check us out next week. And yeah, we will see you all next week and have a good rest of your day.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Take care. Bye.